All right. Looking at these questions, let's look at the first one. A golfer strikes a ball which then moves off at an angle to the ground. The ball follows the path shown. Okay. The graphs show the vertical and horizontal component of the velocity of the ball. Fine. What is the speed of the ball just before it hits the ground? Okay. For this one, it would do us good if we have a quick refresher of the projectiles. For a projectile motion, what happens? If I strike something off at an angle and it follows this semicircular path, what would happen is that along this initial motion, it can be broken down into two components, the vertical component as well as the horizontal component, the velocity. Okay, so the horizontal component, since we usually ignore the air resistance, there is no force which is opposing the motion along the x-axis. So throughout the motion, the horizontal component stays intact. So Vx stays the same, and that is what is shown over here in the graph, that throughout the motion of the ball, the horizontal component, it remained the same, 40 meters per second. Okay. The other thing is about the vertical motion of the projectile. Just a second, please. The vertical motion Vy. What would happen to this vertical motion as the ball it gains height? The gravity is pulling it down. So as it reaches the maximum height at this top point, this Vy it becomes zero, and then whatever Vy was lost while it was going up, that is gained again as it comes down. So this Vy over here would be the same as Vy at the start. So over here we can see that initially Vy was 30, and then gradually it decreased when it reached the maximum height at this point, and then over here it would again become minus 30 when it falls again to the ground. Okay, so for the velocity when the ball it hits the ground, we have got the Vx and Vy. And to find the resultant vector, we can simply use the Pythagoras theorem. This would be the direction of the velocity. So hypotenuse squared, V squared will be equal to Vx squared plus Vy squared. Another thing in this vertical motion, if this positive and negative value is confusing you, this is positive for the reason that at this point of time, the projectile it's going up, and then once it crosses the maximum height, then it is coming down, so the direction it shifts. So that is why when it hits the ground, it is minus 30. But for our purpose over here, since we would be squaring the value, it wouldn't make a difference. Squared, negative squared, it would become the same. Okay, so here I can say V is equal to under root 40 squared plus 30 squared. And if I do that, under root 40 squared plus 30 squared, this is 50. So that is the D. As you said, this would be the answer. Okay, now moving to the next one. Motorcycle involves crossing rewind from P to Q, motorcycle traveling horizontally when it leaves point P. 10. If we ignore the air resistance, all the velocity it had was, so the distance it is covering is 10. Okay, 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 okay. So over here, what's happening is that it is losing height as it goes from P to Q. At P, its height was 80 meters. Over here, the height is 78.75 meters. Okay, so the distance covered, if I talk about the vertical fall in the distance, that would be 80 minus 78.75. This would be 1.25. 80 minus 78.75. The distance covered is 1.25 meters. Okay, and then for this meter, we are only considering the downward motion of this motorcycle. We will for the time being ignoring the forward motion, because if we the same time it takes to come down is the time it takes to go forward. So if we do it just for the time for it to come down, that would be the same time taken for it to move forward. Okay, so 1.25 meter is what it has covered. So this is the value of S. Then we, okay, for the vertical motion, since it had forward velocity only, initial vertical velocity U would be 0. Okay, and A is 10 and time is what we have to calculate. So S, U, A and T, we can do that with equation. S is equal to UT plus half AT squared. UT, since U is 0, this would become 0. 1.25 is equal to 0 plus half into 10 into t squared. So now if you solve it, 2 ones are 2, 2 5s are 10. So 1.25 divided by 5 is equal to t squared, and t will be equal to under root square root 1.25 divided by 5. This is 1 over 2 or 0.5 seconds, which is option C as the marking scheme shows. Okay, now for the third one, stuntman motorcycle jumps a river 5.1 meter wide. He lands at the edge, which is 2 meter lower. So again, if we just consider the vertical motion, since it had only the forward velocity, the vertical velocity initially uy was 0. So applying the same concept over here as well, that height lost is 2, u is equal to 0. Okay, okay, uy is 0, 5.1 meter wide. Okay, okay. Hmm. So what we can do is we can do the same calculation for the time it takes for it to fall down, and then using that time and this distance we can calculate the velocity. Okay, so uy is 0, a is again 10, and if I calculate first t for the vertical motion, so I'll have s is equal to ut plus half at squared. S is how much? 2. Ut, it would become 0, half into 10 into t squared. I don't know if you take the value of 10 or take the value of 9.81. Anyhow, let's do 9.81. 9.81 multiplied by t squared. So it would become 2 into 2 divided by 9.81 is equal to t squared. So square root t is equal to what? Square root 4 divided by 9.81. 9.81. The time is 0.638 seconds. So let's take 0.64 seconds. Okay. And now this is the time, and in this time it has to cover a distance of 5.1. So velocity is equal to distance over time. So 5.1 divided by 0.638. So 5.1 divided by answer 7.986, which means D, 7.986 G. So this should be the horizontal velocity should be 8 meters per second for it to cover the horizontal distance because that is the time, this is the time that it would take to fall down this height. So in this time, while it loses height of 2 meters, it should have covered a forward distance of 5.1. So forward velocity should be at least 8 meters per second. Do let me know. I mean, from my end, I've tried to give as much explanation as possible. If you need any further explanation, you can let me know and I'll explain it further then.